Preparing the live stream. So in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned into the famous Dwayne's podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne. With me, I have two special guests. It's preparing the live. And that is Ms. Hope, and also a newcomer to the show, Miss Ahmadjays. Say what up to the people.
Hey, how are you?
So, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to debunk the plant-based lifestyle. I know at one point, I believe Hope was vegan. I was like vegetarian, vegan, or whatever you want to call it, for like a good 4 years. And then I just decided that I'm going to just do what I want, because that's what a free person does, whatever they want. And I just wanted to kind of talk about some misconceptions, a lot of misinformation, a lot of agents out there, a lot of agents that look like us out there just promoting this lifestyle. And I just want to get into the bare bones of it. No pun intended. So, Hope, do you want to kind of give like a brief synopsis of your journey from the plant-based lifestyle, if you don't mind?
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't do it, for years and years. I did vegetarian for like about a year, and then I tried vegan shortly after that for about a year as well. And initially when you do it, you kind of feel good and floaty, and then as time progresses, you're just hungry all the time. Like, it doesn't feel really good. You really got to eat a lot to even kind of feel active and like you want to do anything. And it just started to weigh on my body, and on top of my body, it started to weigh on my emotions and my mental, and how I felt about myself and just being active and just everyday activities. Something as simple as going outside. I just wanted to stay home, and then I didn't have energy to do anything, but I was hungry, so I had to eat to get energy to do nothing. So it was pretty short-lived. I feel like it really, for me, deteriorated my body pretty quickly, or I felt the effects pretty quickly.
True. Just out of curiosity, what kind of made you want to go that route initially, like to be vegetarian? Was it just like for health reasons, or?
Because I heard from a lot of people that it was supposed to be better, or that meat is more the fear tactics of meat being bad for you more so than vegetables being better. All those memes and stuff going around about, oh, there's cancer in meat, or, oh, meat, rots in your gut, or, meat isn't supposed to be there. We're not supposed to digest meat, those types of things. I was like, oh, okay, I want a clean body, so let me try to do those things. So a lot of that fear propaganda before I did any research on my own.
True. Samesies. Definitely samesies. Ahmadjays, do you have like a similar story as far as like being plant-based, or any kind of plant-based experiences that kind of brought you to where you are now?
I wasn't vegan, but I was pescatarian from about 2014 up until 2020. And then before 2014, I was like, I didn't eat red meat, like a lot of red meat, and I didn't eat pork, mainly because of quality and just seeing a bunch of propaganda, like Hope said, just all this, it's bad for you. And a lot of recalls were coming out around like 2012. They started saying, oh, beef is being recalled, look out for beef, and all this, the E. coli scare. And the whole spiritual thing kind of got to me. Like a wave of that it wasn't really based on any real information. I know that, I can admit that now. It was really all pseudo information, listening to older people who were online wearing, tribal or ethnic clothes and making themselves appear that they're smarter or they know the way, things like that. And just trying to, I think around 2012, a lot of people our age started wanting to know more. So we just kind of fit into that, what can we do to heal ourselves or feel better about ourselves, get our minds together, things like that. But I was never really vegan, but I was almost going to go vegan in 2020 because I felt bad. Like my mental state was thrown off. I couldn't, when I was exercising, I didn't have any energy. I just felt really weak. And I was like, okay, I need to do something. Maybe I should just drop all meat. And then I was like, wait a minute, let me actually do some research this time instead of just jumping into something based on pseudoscience. And that's when I started understanding, like, okay, this meat thing is it's not what we think. It's being demonized, and looking at the little pyramid thing and how we weren't advised to eat a lot of meat in the first place. So the fact that we've been convinced that it's bad is a total propaganda thing.
Indeed. I think that it was a period of time where it was just a lot of Kool-Aid being sipped, if you will. I think what got me off of meat was, I've been hearing about it for a while. I had an uncle that's been like, he was like pescatarian for like 40 years or something like that. He just recently like decided to, eat some meat because I guess the long-term effects got to him. And I had some, I know some people that will just like, save the animals and all that other weird shit. And,
Yeah.
But I was just, I barely care about people, to be honest with you. I really do. So when it came to hearing about it, it was a Black person. His name is Minister Inky, actually, that I found on YouTube a couple of years back, maybe 6 years back, to kind of talking about it. And I was like, I don't know. He sounds smart. He's making sense. And he speaks in my language. So I don't know. Maybe that might be what works for me. And I never really had health problems. I've been slim, I guess, my whole life up until now. Once I reintroduced meat back into my life and gained like 50 pounds in like 3 months, And I don't know. It just seemed. I think what it really boils down to is just the power of perception and how you can manifest whatever you think is the truth. Like you will give yourself confirmation bias. Like your brain, I feel like it just looks for certain things to confirm what you already believe, whether it's true or not. And I think that was like the biggest thing with me, but then I started to notice like like a lot of vegan pages I used to follow on IG and stuff like that. They're like, I'm just decided to, eat meat again, it's just for health reasons. And other people, like I've seen other people like do like a complete 180, like, man, fuck this vegan shit. Like, it's just propaganda. It's like I was trying mad hard. Like me and my kids were crying, but we were starting to lose our teeth and like lose our hair and all this other stuff. And like, I can't keep it a secret anymore. And it was, I really think it was like a cult, like in a lot of ways. It was really like a cult, and I was never super on board with it because I've seen, and I'm gonna stop rambling after I say this. Cause I'm rambling like fuck right now. I've seen, like, I've interviewed people. I used to have like a vegan podcast, like his own little thing. And I interviewed someone and they said that they had like a little vegan like get together or whatever, talking about meditation and stuff. And she was giving somebody a ride. And the fact that she had leather in her car, they say, you know what, I'll just walk. People are that freaking brainwashed that they'll walk through the streets of DC.
Like a dummy.
Yeah, like a whole dummy. So now that we've gotten the programming out of the way, I want to shift the conversation towards empowering the listeners and also just kind of debunking some things that were told to us for the longest. So I'll ask this question first. Is meat really murder? I guess I can both answer it however you want to. If you want to go alphabetical order, I can do that. Whatever.
You mean like murder for people? 2 people?
They always just said meat. They say vague things that have dual meanings. So
that's the problem.
Yeah.
I never really was in it for the saving of the animal. So I've never looked at food as like I need to feel sorry for it, because if you understand like what you are, you wouldn't like, you start to understand that it's okay to get your sustenance. Like you can't sacrifice your health because you want to have this fake, I'm going to save the animals. Like people need to understand, if they research, that these animals that they're trying to save, they, what are they supposed to do? I just want them to just roam around and just be like, what are they supposed to do? I don't know. I never was in it for that, like saving the animals, but I understand why some people might, even though a lot of people who are they're not farmers, they're not really even around the animals, and they're talking about, oh, these are our friends. I'm like, no, they're not. But you know, if you feel sorry, if you don't want to look at the blood and you feel like you would never be a hunter, then that's one thing. But from a nutritional standpoint, if you need something to replenish your body and feed your cells, then no, it's not murder, because murder is different. Murder is something that you're doing not for food, not for survival. You are doing it for revenge, you're doing it for pleasure, things like that. But I understand why they might think like the slaughterhouses and the way that the animals are being treated by the corporations that are feeding them soy and grain because they want to save money. That's different. But other than that, you know, with the leather, there's a reason why people wore leather and made things out of leather. From a I'm sick of using the word spiritual because I understand what that is. From a like beyond just I want to kill an animal. The reason why we wear fabrics now made of plants is different from when we were wearing leather. And that changed a lot. You know, that has to do with why our lifestyles are different, why our mentalities are different, but nobody's looking into it. Like they just assume that plants love them and everything that grows has something to do with helping them become an ascended person. But plants are actually toxic. They're toxic. Most plants that we eat, they have to be spliced down tons of times so that we can even survive, you know, ingesting them constantly. And that has to do with the fact that these, you know, societies, they wanted to increase the population so that they could have, you know, slavery and stuff like that. That's why people, they leave out the fact that, oh, you know, what we're doing during slavery, we're messing with the crops. So that needs to be looked into as well, because a lot of these plants, like cashews, for instance, that requires heavy slave labor and people to burn their hands to open up these nuts so that you could pretend like you're healthier or you feel better. But what about the people that are being paid 1 cent so that you can have these $9 cashews? That's slave labor. What about people? You know, that's how I see it. Like I would rather people look at it from a realistic perspective, because they're saying it's more sustainable, but it's actually causing a lot of problems.
Hashtag fuck the animals. Hope you're
I to piggyback off that, same here. Like I didn't go, you know, I watched all the slaughterhouse videos and everything like that, and it didn't. That's not what scared me out of eating meat. I understood, and I would say this on Twitter too, that the people who did have issues with, you know, quality of meat, I understood that because it is the corporation, it's how the meat is being produced, but it's not that the meat itself is, you know, causing harm. So, you know, those types of things didn't really move me to even try the plant lifestyle. It was mainly health, because I was like, oh, they said it's all these long-term benefits, you can be useful, this and that. So yeah, let's try it. Of course, those are all lies. And whenever they use plants to say that, you know, the strongest animals eat plants. You know, the only animals in nature that eat plants are prey. Okay. And they always want to use the gorilla as an example. All right. We're not gorillas. I mean, if some people are, but we're not, you know, we're not apes, we're not monkeys, and they don't do anything. Okay. They're strong. What strong in doing what? You know, they're just sitting there picking bugs out of each other's hair, you know, sniffing each other's butt. That's all that they do all day. So what is the benefit of just being strong? And honestly, a lot of these long-term vegans don't look strong. I have yet to see, even the bodybuilders, they look poofy, like their muscles don't sustain, you know. So I've yet to see any healthy person, to me anyways, that doesn't have to do all of these extra things to compensate for what they are saying is bad about, you know, meat. And when they even talk about animals, they leave out all the other animals in the animal kingdom. No one is saying, oh, you know, when a lion go and attacks an antelope, that's murder. They're like, oh, that's nature. That's what happens. So, you know, like Ahmadjays said, why on earth would we deprive our bodies of sustenance when we need it and sit here and just be hungry? We don't say that about any of the other animals that aren't the ones that we consider friends for some reason, which are just domesticated animals because people feel like they can tell them what to do. That's why people are, you know, obsessed with dogs and things like that. Because, oh, I can tell it what to do, but I don't have to have the responsibility, you know, of a baby. And they completely, like she said, to forget about people who's producing these things. And there were videos coming out, I think about the avocados a couple years ago, where they're even talking about drug and human trafficking. And people ignore all of that because they're like, oh, but it's still a plant. Yeah, but look what this plant is doing for the people who own this plant are doing. Did y'all not see that they were trafficking whole people? No? Okay, cool. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of cognitive dissonance and people looking the other way at the bigger issue here. You know, I think that veganism in the 21st century is what recycling was in the 20th century, where you feel like you're doing something good, even though you may not be, but you just feel good doing it. It's like, yeah, you know, I recycle glass and aluminum and shit. And, you know, I'm not contributing a carbon footprint, or so I think, you know. But when you pull back the veil and see what's really going on, it's like, all right. And it's just crazy because I remember, you know, the kind of vegan that I wasn't one that like would tout, you know, scream from the mountaintops that that's what I was. You know, when we had lunch or whatever at work or something like that, or like a social gathering, and they would notice I wouldn't eat meat or whatever. And then they go, oh, so you don't do whatever? I'm like, yeah. And that was that, you know. And that was pretty much that. Like, I wasn't trying to push it on people because
convert.
Yeah, you know, I wasn't a missionary for, you know, the Church of Vegan in Christ. Like, that wasn't me, you know what I'm saying? So and that was a big thing also, now that I really think about it, you know, hindsight's 2020, like a lot of people that are like, when you see someone that's like completely brainwashed and like really forcing a lifestyle, that's how you know it's like something's wacky about this. Like I can't get jiggy with this shit. Like, you know, people, even back in the day, when people would like splash people with paint if they wore a fur coat. One, I hope you can fight. I really hope you can. I really, really hope you can fight. You throwing paint on people and shit. But you know, it's just extreme and it doesn't solve anything. But you know, we can talk about I've seen people like on the other end, like extreme carnivores that like they eat nothing but meat. Some people just eat raw meat, like on some other shit. Y'all know anything about that? Anything about like that being okay?
I mean, like raw. Yeah, I've heard that. I actually watched a video later that talked about raw meat being good for enzyme production.
I don't know if I would like raw meat, but I have seen some channels of people who promote the carnivore diet because of nutrition. Yeah. Not for, like, to me, people say carnivore might be extreme, but the benefits that they're talking about and the nutritional information that they're giving trumps this plant-based diet, which is based on pseudo information and emotion for domesticated animals. And when you're talking about diet, you're not talking about saving anything. You're talking about your body and what it needs. So the plant-based diet is not even really a diet. And when you look up, you know, should children have it, should babies have it, they're going to be like, no, because they're not going to develop properly. But you see people doing that anyway and putting their children in harm's way. And we know that giving a baby like formula, which is majority soy and sugar, is bad for them. But yet somehow people have wrapped their heads around the fact that, oh, well, you know, because of philosophy, this is what veganism is based on. It's not really based on nutritional information or science. It's based on philosophy and this idea that more plants that you put in your system, the purer your mind will be. When in reality, we see that, like you said, they throw paint on people and they get angry when you debunk their diet. and they suffer from a lot of psychological disorders that they're not willing to admit, and that has to do with the fact that they're eating too many of these plants, and they're not understanding that plants, just because they don't talk, or maybe they do and we can't hear them at the frequency that they're at, because it's like people are looking at plants as if they're harmless. They're not. And then if you go in the woods and you lay down, you might lay on something that gives you a rash, something that really fucks you up. And they're not taking that into account because they want to pretend like they're so natural. I'm like, well, take your ass outside naked and don't come back. Don't bring any gadgets, just go on and survive off only plants. And then, watch out for the wild animals that aren't vegan, stuff like that. Or just the animals that will maul you to death. Like, people need to stop thinking that they're as natural as they want to be. Like, you're not that natural. Because the way we live, what we do, we're not like these other animals. And they have a hard time understanding that because they want to be emotional. And it's really from religion. Like, because when you look into agriculture, the dawn of agriculture is also coincidentally the dawn of religion and the dawn of slavery. So this is where this is coming from. And they don't want to admit that. They want to say, no, our ancestors ate plants. Well, prove it, because they're saying that that's not true. They're saying we were hunter-gatherers, which means we hunted meat. And then when we did not have meat, we might have found some berries, but we did not survive off of those berries because, one, they were wild, which means they were stronger, and they were seasonal. And way back in the day, we were not, as ignorant as we are today, where we knew that meat was nourishment and that these other things were going to be used in our body as energy burners. So when we started eating the grains and things, it's because the population increased. Meat was scarce for certain groups of people. Classism started. So of course they just decided, okay, we're just going to convince them that, they should eat more vegetables than the people who are more, classier than them. That's where these ideas are coming from. And that's why when you watch these movies with peasants, they always eat cabbage soup. They're always surrounded by the plants. Their teeth are falling out. They're bony and they're gone mad. But the royal people, the rich people, they indulge in fruits and the finest quality meats, caviar, all types of stuff. So all they have to do is pay attention. And, we have to admit that we're wrong. We can't sit here and say, well, I've been doing it for years. Like, some of these people are so young and they're trying to act like they're the basis of nutritional, information. And you're not. You're not old. If you were an old person, it would show differently. And it does show, like she said, they don't look healthier than people who are eating protein. They don't. I've never seen a vegan athlete. Vegan athletes and then meat eating athletes, you can put them in a race and the meat eating athletes are going to win because they are feeding their body versus sacrificing it for animals to survive for a little bit, because there are always going to be people who eat animals. So you're never going to save them anyway.
Yes. Right. Goofy as hell.
And people, right. And people allow these philosophies to they go and talk junk about like their bloodline. Like, so many times when I was talking to vegan people, they would be like, oh, our parents didn't know any better. Our grandparents didn't know any better. Our ancestors didn't know any better. They ate meat, especially with slavery. They have this weird idea that they were poorly fed and all of those things. And when your family was actually right, like, why would you listen to these new philosophies, these new, or if they're not new, they're just remade, if you research it and look back, they're all things that are remade, all things that are done again, all things that are patriarchal for one, and they don't care about what we need to do as females for our body and how our body is different than theirs to begin with. They don't even care about that. But they go out of their way to talk about their families and then literally go to their family's house and be disrespectful and think that that's okay because they're doing it, for veganism. And then they come on, these chat rooms and, oh, my family's so ignorant, this and that. Meanwhile, they are dying of malnutrition and their families over there, and then when they talk about meat too, or how their family ate poorly, it's usually fast food, or it's usually, that's what they grew up on, fake butters, pizzas. They didn't grow up on home cooked meals. I grew up on home cooked meals in my family. I didn't have any issues with malnutrition. I wasn't starving all day long. My mother cooked and we used meat, and, it was a balanced meal. It wasn't just meat. We weren't strict carnivores like you were saying. But it was a balanced meal. And because of that, I didn't have these aversions to things. Because what people are really sick, the things that they feel like they need to purge, it's all of those greases and fake butters and sugars and starches and carbs that have been in their body since birth, because their mama fed them formula, they didn't get breast milk, and then as soon as they could eat, they had McDonald's in their hand. Like, it's 2-year-olds in the back seat eating a whole Happy Meal by themselves, and they don't really have any teeth, just sitting there gumming on it. Like, and that's not being broken down in the body, you know. And while fast food has always been pretty, you know, low quality, they changed the quality of it over time. And like she was saying, use cheaper products. You know, people get all scared and stuff when they hear animals like chickens. Oh, they if you put chicken in front of chickens, what are they going to do? They're going to eat the chicken. But these corporations feed it soy and corn, and that's where the disease is coming from. It's coming from the sugar, the processed wheat, whatever they're eating. It's not coming from the meat. And that's why those raw, even the pure carnivores, even though, you know, I personally wouldn't go that extreme, that's why they look good, and that's why they're still healthy, because the nutrients and benefits that they're getting from the meat is always going to supersede and surpass eating 10 plant-based meals a day. It's just more bioavailable. That's just how it is. And that's the truth. That's not based in philosophy. You can look that up.
Yeah, I think there's like a lot of fake news that just started with this whole vegan craze. I remember I used to read this book called Proteinaholic, which was talking about, you know, the whole basically meat industry. And I think that's really what it boils down to, is it's not just that meat is murder, it's just what they've done, the way that the factory farming, that's what it really is. You know, if it was meat from an animal that was raised humanely, whatever that means, you know what I'm saying, that ate what it's naturally supposed to eat, then yeah, it should be fine. But, you know, eating wheat, steroids, those extra shit, like, obviously it's going to have some sort of effect. You can even get to the spiritual stuff, you know, based upon, you know, they basically were raised in like Alcatraz, you know, one next to the next, you know, this freaking animal Auschwitz and shit. Like, that's what these animals are basically raised in. And yeah, I guess I could transfer over, maybe. I don't know. But the point is, like, it's still inhumane, and, you know, there's they're just cutting costs. I mean, they're adding stuff to the Coke to make it stretch. That's what they're doing. And if anyone's ever done Coke before, or know someone that's done Coke before, when it's the bad shit, there tends to be some pretty adverse effects. So, what should somebody eat? I feel personally that, you know, maybe each person is different to a degree. You know, different things work with different people. Or maybe we're just at a certain level where we need to detox from what we were raised on. And, you know, certain people may need more of one thing or another. But do you think that there is a one stop, one beats all kind of diet, or is it just kind of like whatever works for that individual?
I don't think that any, like, it depends on what you're trying to do with your body. But as far as like only eating vegetables, I don't think there's anyone that will survive properly just eating fruits and vegetables, because I mean, we see that's just not the case. You cannot properly get your full, you know, nutrients and benefits from strictly eating vegetables. You know, as far as the amount of meat or whatever that people want to eat, or the types of meat, I mean, that's on them and whatever they're comfortable with, because some people won't eat organ meats, even though those are pretty nutrient dense, just because they don't like, you know, the look of organs, and, you know, that's fine. And then as far as detoxing, so detoxing was one of those words that's thrown around a lot too. It originally just had to do with alcohol. Like, that was it, you know, getting rid of whatever that addiction is. And when you're detoxing your body from what people think is meat, you're really giving your digestive system a break from the overload of carbs and sugars through the means of vegetables, because for some reason vegans like to forget that all of those things are starches and all of those things break down as sugar in the body. So your body is just getting rid of that. It's getting a break for him to do all of those conversions, because, for example, I saw we all have posted before, carrots. People have this misconception that carrots give you good eyesight or carrots give you vitamin A. It's not the carrot, it's the beta carotene in the carrot that has to be converted and converted and converted before it even gets to the form that you can use in your body, when you can just eat a piece of meat that already has the retinol, vitamin A in it for you right there. And when it comes to like eating raw fruits and vegetables, you have to know which ones aren't, spiced. Of course, Dr. Sebi has this list, but that's anyway. You look for yourself and see what vegetables and fruits are spliced. Like carrots are spliced from parsnips. If you eat a parsnip, to me, it tastes better than a carrot. I'd rather have that. It has more flavor to it instead of eating, the clone, because that's what it is. It's a clone piece of food, and it doesn't taste good. It doesn't have as much nutritional value. A carrot's pretty much sugar water. Like that's pretty much all it is. And when you cook it down to nothing, you got to do all the seasonings to even make them taste good. So just understanding what is even good for your body, what your body can take, because we do have digestive enzymes in our body that certain fruits do aid in. For example, some of the vegans will say, drink some lemon juice in the water, or drink some warm lemon juice in the morning, or lemon in your water, or pineapple, and to detox your gut. It's not that the raw food is detoxing your gut. What's happening is those raw foods, these particular ones, have enzymes in your body that help push out whatever is there. It's eating up, the last bit that is there. But if you keep eating just that, it's going to eat away at you. And that's why they look so thin and withered, because they're literally being broken down. Because I think there was that article that was going around where it said pineapple starts to eat you once you eat it. Pineapple is one of those fruits that have those digestive enzymes. You're not supposed to eat it every single day, but everyone heard, what was that song? Pineapple. Yes, diced pineapples, and just started chugging those because they, wanted to have Sweet Pushes Saturday or whatever was going on. So they were wondering why they had sores in their mouths and why they had, yeast infections, because you just overloaded your body with a bunch of sugar. So it's understanding what these because it's not this many, we're not supposed to be out here eating, quinoa and chia seeds and all of, especially not seeds. But anyway, let me not go off a tangent. We're not supposed to be eating all those things anyway, because they eat us as they're going through our body. So understanding which ones are actually even good for your gut to begin with is where it starts. So looking up the food, I can't tell any individual person what to eat for themselves, but I can say that no one can get their full nutrients from strictly eating vegetables, not without supplements, not without eating 10 times a day, not without all these extra stuff. It's just not possible.
True.
And people, they're not looking into, like, when they talk about raw and they say that raw diet is better than so-called vegan because the vegan is including all these processed substitutes and stuff, they're both bad to me, but especially raw. Like, I really feel like raw is even worse because most people, unless you have your own garden, which everybody does not have access to, which also makes it, not sustainable because everybody cannot have a garden. But most of these people are buying vegetables from the store. Now, these vegetables that are at the store, they're grown in conventional farming, and we see them when we drive up and down the highway that they're spraying them with pesticides, like nuts, vegetables, just all that stuff. So when you eat something raw, like some celery, which has a lot of water in it, like vegetables in general, they hold a lot of water content. They're all water and then sugar. The pesticides are in there. So you didn't cook the vegetables. So you're juicing, and you're getting all the pesticides, you're getting all the insects that are on there. And then people are like, well, I didn't see an insect. I'm like, it's there. While people are talking about parasites in meat, I'm like, no, insects, parasites on the plants. They live there, they live on it, they prefer it. This is their shit. This is their stuff. And without insects, you wouldn't even have any of these farm plants. Like, you wouldn't have them. These are called flowering plants because they're angiosperms, and angiosperms require insect pollination. So that's actually where the parasites are coming from. And they're in denial about that. So when they're telling people to juice, you're basically telling people to drink. Not only are you drinking the plant's toxins just because it's a plant and it has toxins to defend itself, it wants to survive, and the elements that are in it that we're confusing with, oh, that's for me. That's so I can heal. This is for the plant. So it could be a thing, like, so it could be a material and you're mistaking it for your healing juices. But the plant has phytic acids, the plant has oxalates, and it has all these other anti-nutrients to block you from absorbing these nutrients. That's why you have to eat so many plants to get even just a fraction of what you would get from a little piece of steak. And it's dangerous to tell people to just juice and not eat anything else, not get their gut biome intact. And then when they say, oh, meat rots in your gut because meat sustains us. So when we eat meat, we don't immediately go to the bathroom. That doesn't mean that meat is rotting in our gut. It means that the meat is being used by our body as fuel. What actually does rot in your gut, in your lower intestines, is fiber, because we do not digest fiber. So once you eat it, your body absorbs the sugar. And if you don't burn off its energy, it's like, okay, we're going to turn it into fat. And then the fiber, which is the stuff that the plant fibers that you cannot digest, that looks like chewed up, hay, it goes in your lower intestine and it actually rots and feeds the gut biome that, they say that you need to feed over the gut biome of bacteria that's actually, keeping your gut intact. So there's a lot of confusion and misinformation going around about how our body works, because people prefer spirituality and pseudoscience over actual information. And then with Black people, they have this thing where they keep blaming, like, well, we don't want to listen to that because that's the white man's science. I'm like, look, you can't keep saying that we taught these people everything and then say they invented science. This makes no sense. Science is real, science makes sense. And a lot of religious things, they deal with belief versus knowing. And we're not in the age of belief anymore. So for you to just get on the bandwagon of belief, you really, that's going to be a detriment to your body, because you have a choice now. Back in the day, people were ignorant because they didn't have access to technology and the hidden knowledge that the so-called elite was keeping from the people. So that was different. That's why our ancestors were able to survive as well, because they didn't have the knowledge. It wasn't there. But now you have a phone, you can easily look up these things like, what's an oxalate? What's phytic acid? Why you guys are talking about, oh, we don't want to eat acidic foods. Okay, well, plants have acids called phytic acid. It's toxic. And we have to understand, on one spectrum, they're saying these plants are medicinal. They're very magical, and they're going to do these wonderful things. And then on the other hand, they're just like, they're not going to do anything. They're not toxic. They're not powerful. I'm like, well, which is it? Because plants are medicinal, but we already know that drugs in general, if you take too much of them, they become a poison. So that's why we didn't eat all these vegetables, because we knew that there's a difference between a medicine and a food. Food fuels the body. Medicine heals illnesses and diseases. You don't keep taking medicine. So when they say they're detoxing, you don't detox with the medicine, like with the same thing that you're trying to detox. You don't need to detox meat, because meat is food. What you need to detox is the sugars, like she said. These people grew up eating Gushers, Hawaiian Punch, margarine. They're just leaving that out. And then talking about, well, we ate meat, okay? And your people probably cooked the meat in Crisco, vegetable oil, not to take that into account, because they're like, well, it's just oil. It's from a plant. It's seed oil. But when you go into the forest, where are you going to find a fountain of seed oil just flowing, waiting for you to get a bucket and be like, I'm going to take this home and we're going to cook something? That's not natural. That takes a factory. It takes the corporations that you claim you don't like to, smash these seeds, press these seeds down and put them into plastic, which is a lot of vegan vessels. While they're talking about, we're saving the environment. Well, what's all this plastic shit? All these fruits and stuff and these bags and stuff everywhere. This isn't saving anything. It's causing more trash. To me, I mean, it doesn't make sense after a while. You have to admit, it's okay to admit that you fell for something, you were wrong. And maybe we were supposed to go through that process. Maybe we was supposed to be shocked by these plants, because what I noticed personally is when I was mainly carbs and I ate fish and eggs here and there, I just felt like my mind was just going crazy. And I was just like, what is wrong with me? Like, and all I could think of was like, I need to buy another herb. I need to buy something else. I need to buy this. I need to buy that. And nobody's looking into that either, because a lot of these people who are pushing veganism, they're surviving, like they're paying their bills off of people's ignorance. So if you come to them with the information, they're like, well, even though that's right, I'm making a lot of money off of this product. So I won't be telling my customers that it's too good to be true, which is, it is what it is. But that's what happens when people don't know. They don't want to look up stuff. And plants, to me, plants will be considered spiritual, like they're claiming. And then meat will be considered food. So it's not going to possess us. It's not going to put us in a mental frenzy. Like these plants, we need to start looking at them from a different perspective and not take them so lightly and just assume that they're living for us. Like they have their own thing. They're a totally different cell. Like they have all these genetics and stuff. Like if you just look up plants, take time out to look them up instead of thinking that you're entitled to something that's inside of them. If you really want to respect nature, because a lot of these plants, they don't have enough. All plants, they don't have a defense system as far as attacking, running away. So all they have is toxins. You know, and they're not looking into that. They're like, no, these plants are toxic. All plants are toxic because they have to defend themselves. They want to live. Even the spliced ones, they're living because they have the ability and the toxins. So other, plants, well, insects and stuff won't bother them. And they have to keep spraying them with pesticides because the insects that actually help pollinate them come and eat them. They come and eat them and like, this shit don't belong here. What is this doing here? Like, and they don't even understand that concept. Like the reason why insects tear gardens apart is because insects, they're a part of the decomposition system in earth with the fungi, and their job is to get rid of stuff and recycle it. So when we make gardens and farms, here come the insects like, okay, what's this? Get rid of this. What is this? Get rid of it. And then for them to say, oh, well, a meat is death and meat has blood and it's death and you're nasty, you're going to have maggots inside of you, like I said, the insects. But the fact that they're ignoring that the plants are grown on manure. The plants are grown on shit. So who's really eating the death here?
And these are all things that you can tell who paid attention in school and who didn't, because we talk about this all the time about the people who come and admit years later that they cheated off of tests and whatnot, because we learned all of this in school. All this information was presented to us. I'm not saying you had to pay attention to every little thing. I'm not saying you had to get an A+ in all of your, science courses, but at the very least, something as simple as understanding plant cells and animal cells. Like most schools had to do a project on that, as well as the actual information. If you didn't, that was one of the biggest, units that we learned, because they wanted us to understand, hey, these plants, are something. Because what did we have? We had DARE and advanced the drug programs in elementary school. Then we switched to learning about the plants, the drugs in middle and high school, because that's something that we need to know. They're around us. They're all around us, and it's interesting to me that they are so willing to buy the philosophic propaganda behind, ascending and being enlightened and being, alkaline, which our body is not alkaline, by the way. Our blood is neutral, and we have acids all over. Our literal DNA is an acid. So our body should not be alkaline. I don't know, that's more pseudoscience that they just got into to make themselves feel good. And alkaline isn't electric either. Acids are electric because we have battery acid. That's how we have electricity. Electrolytes, those are acids. But people get so caught up in the spirituality, they forget or they ignore conveniently that plants are spiritual. Plants are spiritual things. They are alive, and they ignore that plants are sentient. I've had many conversations with vegans where they do not want to accept, they'll say that plants are living, but they don't want to say that they're sentient, because for some reason, people think of sentience only through the way that we express sentience. Oh, you're walking. Oh, you're talking. Oh, you're moving. Every living thing doesn't do that. So is it any less sentient? No. Like she said many times, plants have toxins in them to survive. And they also forget in school, when we learned about all the plant revolutions, we had that whole boll weevil attack where the bugs came and cleared everything out. Bugs and plants go hand in hand. And a lot of these, it's either DMT or LSD, I'm pretty sure it's DMT, was created through a fungus from a bug trying to take away a plant. It was a self-defense thing. So another thing that people think is here for them in order to enlighten them or bring them wisdom. No, it's here to defend itself. And you're sitting here, taking it in large amounts and then wondering why your brain is fried, or your brain is being taken over and you can't adjust back to normal life because you sat there and overdosed on a plant. And some things you can't come back from. Like that's just it. And if you choose the, I mean, that's your life, but some things you can't come back from. And that's why I feel like a lot of older people, they get tired and then they're like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Or I'm about dying and I'm only 50 and I want to live some more. You know, people conveniently pick and choose what they want to, but the game is a game.
Oh, we got some comments here. My boy Flash Tail says, even wow. Let me try to not make him sound crazy because there's a lot of typos in here. I guess we even have to carefully. All right. We need to pay attention to what vegetables that we eat since a lot have been grown genetically. Okay. I can agree with that. We also have a comment from Nika, who's been a guest on the show before. She was like, we also overeat, but that's another conversation. It definitely is. And I think that I remember reading this thing, and once you've been lied to, you kind of think everything else is a lie. At least that's how I operate. But I remember hearing something in this book, which was called Eating to Live, not the one from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the other one by the white man. And he talked about basically the whole concept of hunger and how it actually doesn't start in your stomach, but you feel it in your mouth. Pause. And I've always wondered, you know, now, like what he really meant by that. Is it just like actual cravings, like a chemical addiction to like, you know, the sugar and crap that we've been eating, or is it actual hunger? Like what does real hunger even really feel like?
Yeah, for the comment, we eat a lot because the SAD diet, which is the standard American diet, is telling us to eat 6 servings of bread and grains and 4 to 5 servings of vegetables and fruits, is making us addicted to sugar. So if you wake up in the morning and you eat a biscuit or some cereal, and all that boils down to sugar, you know, of course you're going to be craving more sugar by lunchtime. So you're going to eat some more sugar. And then by dinner, you're going to have at least 3 sides of carbs, and you're going to have your little bit of meat there to feel guilty about. But they got us with that by telling us that we should eat majority carbs. And what the problem is, people don't know what carbs are. They think, I don't know what, but when you look up carbs, it's going to tell you that vegetables are carbs, fruits are carbs, starches, breads and grains, carbs. So if all of that is sugar, you can understand how they got everybody to think that they're supposed to just be constantly eating all this food. Plus dessert, like people now feel like they're entitled to eat sweets, whereas this was something that we did for festivities, like for, you know, like it's that time of the year to celebrate and be merry. So now we're having sweets. But now people can go to the store and get some candy, cookies, just anything, all that type of stuff every day if they want to. So that's sugar addiction. And that's why we eat so much. When you eat mainly protein and you eat a low carb, not even just eliminate all carbs, just eat low carb, right? You're not going to crave food like that. You're going to feel full. You're not even going to be bloated after you feel full because your body's gonna be like, I ate what I was supposed to eat. But when you eat sugar, your mind is gonna be like, man, that tastes so good. Like you said with the mouth thing, that tastes so good. I want some more. Not even about hunger, but really about the taste. And that's why, and sight too, because fruits and sweets and things, they are made to look beautiful so that we can want to be a part of them. Like they attract us. That's why we say it doesn't make sense to say that plants are electric. It makes sense to say that sugar is magnetic, because logically, when you see a piece of cake dolled up with the frosting, the colors, that's pretty to you. You're like, I want to eat that. It looks like it tastes good. It's not healthy, but it looks like it tastes good. So these colors and like if we went in the store and we went in the cereal or the chip aisle or any of the aisles, because all that shit in the middle of the store, that's all garbage. But all of it is, they use colors to get you to buy it. Like if everything was gray, if all the Doritos was gray bag, people would not be that enticed because it's boring. The colors make us, the brands, even the commercials, like the songs, the jingles, it's all spells and it's all spiritual. It's all spiritual possession. And that's why, you know, we back in the day, we understood that sugar attracted spirits because we would leave cookies out for Santa, or we would leave candy out for the spirits, for the ancestors, or whatever, you know, we were doing with when it came to magic. or any type of, craft, we knew that sugar was going to attract the spirits. But now it's like people, they don't want to understand that. They want to say, no, carbs are electric. Well, in chemistry, that's not true. Salt is electric. The ocean is electric. Fresh water is not electric. And that's why the forest survives off of fresh water. You take these angiosperms and you put them at the beach, they're not going to survive because it's just not going to work.
True. I actually have a couple of things I wanted to see if y'all could potentially debunk, like fads and such. So the keto diet. Y'all got any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the issue with the keto diet is that, to me anyways, that it's not balanced. It's not a balanced diet. They just kind of replace carbs with sometimes starchy vegetables, which defeats the purpose, because as we have said many times, it ends up breaking down the sugar anyway. Like instead of a sandwich, they'll use like a bell pepper. Okay, I mean, it might be easier to eat, but it's still going to break down, to sugar in the body. So a lot of these fad diets are still imbalanced at the end of the day. Now, I do see the benefit of it more than I see, of course, the benefit of being vegan, because at least they're incorporating meat, they're incorporating healthy fats, they're incorporating, animal-based protein. So I get why it's a little bit more appealing. But at the end of the day, the replacements that they replace it with still end up, breaking down the sugar at the end of the day. And that kind of ties in with the color psychology, because a lot of fast food places have jumped on with the whole keto as well. Pizza places. Oh, I have a keto pizza, which is just cheese and toppings in a bowl, keto pizza. All right. Or I have, a keto sandwich, and they're still using, it's still propaganda. So they're still using all of that color psychology. And, I think we learned in school, or maybe I just did. There's a documentary where they talk about, or maybe it's something I researched, I don't know, but they talk about the colors literally awakening those cravings, not your hunger, those cravings. That's why most restaurants and fast food restaurants include some type of red and yellow in their signs, because that advertisement awakens the cravings in your body, not the hunger. And then to comment on what you said earlier about knowing the difference between hunger and cravings, I know for me personally, since I started eating more protein dense and lowering the amount of carbs that I eat, I don't feel the need to eat all day. I feel sustained. I feel full. I don't have to go, I might get a little hungry here and there because I'm active. I'm an active person in general, but it's not like how when I was eating mostly plants, I had to keep eating to even feel not hungry. And when my stomach is digesting and growling, when I was eating mostly sugar, my mind would connect that with, oh, I need to go eat something because I'm hungry. But now when I hear it digesting or moving, I just, no, that's my stomach doing its thing. I don't have that chemical, that mental chemical connection where it's like, oh, I need to go eat something, because I don't have those cravings anymore. They went away. So all those diets are still fad diets, and they're still using the same color psychology, stuff that the vegans and everything else are doing. So anything that's not, balance, or more worse, replacing one sugar for another, or one carb for another carb, it still defeats the purpose at the end of the day.
True. I got 3 more comments from the same person. Nika's like, damn, we have too much access. Yeah, we do. Yes, on colors. I learned that as well. Fast food restaurants consult with psychologists for designs. They definitely do. They're definitely doing that. Now, intermittent fasting, or like the whole 1 meal a day thing, is there any credence to that? Like having like maybe like one big meal and then maybe like some fruit or something like that on the side. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because when you eat actual food, like the proteins and the fats, fat is important too. Like people aren't talking about fat, that's a whole nother discussion, but you need your fats. Your fats and your proteins. You eat these things, you're gonna feel full. So you're going to fast just based on your body wanting to. You're not gonna have to force yourself. Whereas with these people who are doing these raw diets, they're forcing themselves to fast. They're walking around, I'm so hungry. Let me take another swig of celery apple juice. And they know they want to eat something because their body is not getting any nutrition. But when you eat, start eating meat again, and you eat just the meat, like people, they feel guilty about just eating meat because we've been taught for so long that if you just eat meat, you're not getting your veggies. What about your veggies? And making us think that there's something wrong with just eating meat. But if you try it, if you try these crazy ass raw diet, you could try a carnivore diet just for a little while. Like try it for 2 weeks, try it for 1 week and see how you feel mentally. And then you can go back to doing whatever you're doing. But I guarantee you, if you try it, you will see different results than when you were drinking a gallon of raw juice, because your body is going to be like, I want to fast because I'm full. So I don't need to eat 3 meals a day. Like since I went back to meat, I don't eat 3 big meals a day. I'll eat 1 major meal and then have like a couple eggs or something. I don't really just sit around just eating all this meat. Like people, when they think of carnivore diet, they like, oh, you must eat like a ton of meat, 50 sausages. No, that's what you do with the mangoes and guava and all that stuff. And we have to think about with the keto diet still promotes that we purchase large amounts of packaged foods.
Mm-hmm.
We need to stop supporting these because these are the corporations that have given our people diseases. So if people want to really fight the good fight, we have to start supporting real farmers because they exist. There are people who have cattle, they have animals that they treat with respect and they farm them. And then you have these corporations who also have animals, they feed them soy, and they also endorse snacks and fast food, and they're all together with their little, their garbage. So we need to stop supporting it. We need to stop supporting snacks. We don't need snacks. Snacks are an addiction. People need to start getting into exercise, because if you exercise and you eat what your body needs, you won't be thinking about snacking. And they watch so much TV, that's why they want to snack as well, because they're sitting around. I'm binge watching. What is binge? That's drinking, right? Okay, so drug. And then it's called plant-based. It's called plant-based, like a base head. So these are just some clues to let you know that these diets, they're not good for you. They have these words that are telling you that this is something to do with getting your mind hooked on something. So when you fast for real, your body is nourished and you won't have to force yourself into fast mode. That's why certain predators, like reptiles, for instance, they eat meat. They don't eat vegetables. So, but when they eat, even though people look at them and there's a program out to get people to blame reptilians for the government, that's all propaganda. But reptiles, they eat and they won't eat for a while because the meat has sustained them. Whereas your gorilla, they sit around and eat vegetables all day. Who wants to just sit there? You'll never be able to eat as much vegetables as them anyway. So, and then I thought we were trying to get away from them saying that we were apes.
Yeah,
like
no, that's
people
real.
like, oh.
No, that's real. And then like with the fasting, definitely once you're eating more nutrient dense food, you just don't feel the need to eat all the time. You just don't. You just do it naturally. So like during the week, I'm a little more active because I'm working out, I'm walking, I'm, doing my little jobs here and there. So I do have sometimes my 3 meals, but they're not big. They're like little meals right here. And with the, a more dense meat portion and maybe some sides, maybe not. At the sides there, I may not eat them because I may not want them too. I may not just simply crave the vegetables or whatever's on the side anyway, because the meat is enough. And then sometimes I don't even eat the 3rd meal. So it depends, but that all goes back to listening to your body and knowing your body, knowing what those, because one of the benefits I will say, because Ahmadjay did say earlier how maybe we did have to go through this, I will say that it did help me listen to my body more when I was on the plant-based diet, because I was able to hear those signs of, okay, I don't like how this feels. I did one of those super, heavy metal detoxes or whatever. And when I was taking it, I kept forcing myself to take it because in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's supposed to help me. It's going to make me feel good. But I was dizzy the entire time. It was just a strong amount of plants. And I was already eating plants at the time. So it was like, overdose on the body. You feel drugged up. You just do. And that's why people always so like giddy and smiling and all this when they're on plants, because they're high. You get high off of sugar. And there are studies out there. Again, Google it. We have these phones. If you're on a phone or a computer, you can go look it up. They have studies about how sugar creates those same addiction and dopamine receptors in the brain as drugs. Like this, I thought this was common knowledge. But anyway, So when you do all of these cleanses, which are nothing but heavy plants, and then another thing too, when I was plant-based, I was looking at herbal birth control. And at the time I was like, oh, this sounds great. But even that messes with, especially for a woman, that messes with the body after a while, because I tried one and my body just didn't like it. It just came to a point after being overloaded with plants and sugar for so long where they were screaming in my head. And that's why I do agree that I do think that they talk. We just don't hear them in words. So we ignore them and kind of demean them a little bit, but they definitely are speaking to us, and then so when I tried it, I was like, I don't know, dog. And the amount that I had to take for so long, everything in plant-based is such huge amounts. Like nothing is just a little pinch here, an ounce here. If you're taking herbal birth control, it's 3 pills a day, 3 times a day, all the time. That's expensive. That is very expensive. And why do I have to do all that to my body? And same thing with plant food. If you want to be, not even a bodybuilder, just something as simple as a vegan athlete, someone who just works out for their own. You got to take this supplement because you're missing vitamin B12 because you're not eating meat. You got to take this supplement because you're missing this. All comes back to because you're not eating meat, because you have made yourself believe so strongly that this is better for you when you're spending all of this money taking these huge amounts of supplements. Nothing is a small amount. And that's just what really, really got to me. Nothing was a small amount. And then I was always hungry. There was no fasting, didn't even come in my mind because I had to keep eating to keep up, literally just to keep up with myself. So once you are eating what your body needs and feeding your actual body and not your emotions and not your psychosis, that's what a lot of people like to do, is feed their disabilities because they don't want to take the work it takes to get past them. And not saying that it's going to be snap your finger and it's there, but you got to make the first step. So once you stop feeding the psychosis from the sugar and everything, you don't have those cravings. So your body just naturally will do what it's supposed to do. I think some of the new people are trying to call it intuitive eating, whatever they want to label it. Listen to your body.
True. Listen to your body. If you want to look like a snack, stop eating snacks. Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff here. I have about 2 questions left, and then we can wrap it up. I forgot where I heard this, but I heard this multiple places, that the amount of meals you eat a day is supposed to equal the amount of dumps that you take a day. True or false?
False. False. That goes back to what Ahmadjays was saying earlier about how the plants just run through us because they're trying to survive. And I just thought about the mucus thing, because everyone's trying to strip their body of mucus. Why are you trying to strip your body of your protective lining? If you didn't have any mucus in your stomach lining, your acid would kill you. Like, it just straight up kill you. So why are we? People just don't understand what mucus is, but that's another topic. Let me not go there. Oh my gosh, what was the question again?
Are you supposed to boo-boo every time you eat?
Okay, that's right. Yes, the plans. I remember it as soon as you said
right after. Mm-hmm.
No,
like
not at all.
Didn't get anything out of it.
That's what I'm saying. If it's coming out of you that quickly, then what did you absorb? I remember when I was younger and I would eat like the cheap corn, and then I'd be surprised that it came out in my poop the next day as a child. And I'm like, what? Did I even digest it? No, you didn't. That's why you're seeing it in your poop. And no, you're not supposed to poop 3, 4. Because if that's the case, the vegans who are eating those 10 meals are pooping 10 times a day. That sounds painful. That sounds busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of plant-based people are obsessed with bragging about how many times they go number 2. But if you just look up, what is it called? It's not called shit farming. That's not what it's called. But there's a period in time where, because the soil like it is now, that's why we have to use manure, was so depleted, they had to start using feces to make
I know what you're talking about.
more fertile. And that goes along with the sewer system and why we now have been convinced to like be a part of the toilets and poop in our water and all that, which is a whole nother topic. But if you're pooping all the time, you're not getting anything out of your food. Like, and they try to say, oh, you're supposed to, if you're not pooping every day, that means you don't poop for 2 weeks. I'm like, no, that's not what it means. I mean, there's 7 days in a week, guys. So I don't have to poop every 5 minutes to be healthy. And there was a post on Instagram that said, you get constipated when you eat meat. And I found, I find that to be false too, because personally, I would only get stomach issues when I would mix carbs, like especially breads and pastas, with meat or anything like these starches, especially these grains and stuff, that the seeds, like she was saying, we don't have a gizzard, so we don't have business eating seeds. We're not squirrels, and we don't have a gizzard like a bird. The reason why a bird has a gizzard is because when they eat seeds, the seed goes in there and their gizzard, grinds it up. They have this little sand pocket inside of them. Like, people need to start really researching. I feel like they're not researching enough. They don't even know about so-called nature that they want to be a part of, but we don't have a gizzard. Just like our cecum in our system is not like a herbivore that is, designed to be on the ground on all fours eating grass. Our body is not set up like that. Like a cow, for instance, they're like, well, cows and buffalo, and they eat plants and stuff. I'm like, well, how many stomachs do they have? And why do they have so many stomachs? How about because these plants are super tough and they require multiple sessions of digestion, and you don't have 4 stomachs, you have 1. And when they say alkaline, you're trying to change your gut to be alkaline. And the animals that have an alkaline stomach, like the apes have a more alkaline stomach than us, closer. Like, our stomach is acidic. So we don't have an issue with eating meat. We can eat meat. That's why when we eat it, we don't die. Like, when people say we're not supposed to eat meat, I'm like, well, how come we can? Like, what is this not supposed to? We can, and we have, and we did, and we should. That's how I feel at this point. Like, I'm over the whole coddling them, because they've spent years online bashing people for eating their family, like she said, their family for eating meat, and they're not bringing any information. They're using memes. They'll go get a picture that they found online of some worms in somebody's belly. Don't know how they got there. Probably got there from drinking water that wasn't salted properly. That's why they put salt in bottled water, because they know that there's parasites in fresh water. And that's probably where those parasites are coming from. And they have that one picture with the pork chop or whatever, that cut of meat that's oozing some sort of pus. And they're like, see, this is what happens when you eat meat. I'm like, this is not nutrition information. This is not facts. This is just you using pictures. Like, we have to get out of that. We have to start admitting that we were wrong. Like, these vegetables, they have to do a lot with religion. And the Veggie Tales, I finally understand, why Veggie Tales exist, because vegetables are a part of the agricultural era. And when we started getting into farming, slavery, okay? So if Black people want to be mad about something, be mad about the fact that all of these unnatural vegetables exist, because that is a part of why we went into servitude. Now, it's easy to figure it out. We should mainly just be eating protein, fat, and seasonal fruits. And there's a lot of fruits that are not even supposed to be eaten. Like berries, those are good fruits. And you don't need a lot of berries to get the benefit from them. You could eat a handful of blackberries and get a lot of, vitamins out of them. But apples, that's not a real fruit. So this, like the Queen Afua lady, she said that we're supposed to drink like juice of apple. And I'm like, why would we, for our fertility? And we are not plants. So for you to say that plants have to do with our reproductive system, that's just you making up stuff. You don't need plants to be able to reproduce. In fact, these vegan girls are saying they're losing their cycle and they're not, ovulating properly. They're having issues with their cycle, and then they want to act like, oh, that's because I'm ascending. No, it's because you're messing up your hormones. And how you get that back in line is fact.
I actually hope I meant to send this to you, but I figured I'd just ask you live on the air, because why not? That's way more fun, right?
Of course.
That account that shall remain nameless, that I always, like to fact check or whatever. She made a post about hot sauce and how hot sauce is bad for you. And I guess because of like the vinegar in it or whatever, and how I guess vinegar is bad. So.
Okay, if vinegar is bad, then why do vegans recommend taking ACV shots to clear your gut? Again, it's that picking and choosing stuff. There's nothing wrong with vinegar. I mean, again, anything in excess is bad. She's probably talking about the hot sauces that have all these preservatives or whatnot. See, and this is where people just pick and choose whatever they want and then create this whole story based on it. If you're eating, hot sauce with simple ingredients, your vinegar, your peppers, your salts, and seasonings and herbs, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not ODing it like anything else. But vinegar itself is not harmful. We used to can and pickle foods. My family still cans and pickles foods because it preserves. It's one of those things that preserves, and we can come back to it later and consume it and it still be healthy, especially for some of these, raw vegetables that are tough to eat. If you don't want to cook it, you can pickle it. Just like fermentation we do with certain people love kimchi, but they're afraid to eat certain pickle foods. It doesn't make sense. That's acid too. That's all the same thing, and then they talk about what's good for our fertility and gut biome, but they don't look at what our body is actually doing. We are mammals, okay? We operate completely different than all these types of animals they want to compare us to. And then when they mention things like, if you're, as soon as you eat, you should basically be pooping. Okay, well, how about the actual animals in nature that y'all like to list out that do eat these things naturally? Are they pooping every second of every day? No, they're not, because their stomachs, which are equipped for these rough, raw foods and vegetables that y'all insist that we need to eat, like Ahmadjays said, have stuff in there to churn it. But it's not a 1 hour process. They're not eating and then shitting as soon as they just got done eating. They're digesting their food because they are plant eaters and they have the digestive system to do that. So no, there's nothing wrong with vinegar, because if there's something wrong with vinegar, then all the vegans I recommend taking ACV shots for whatever cleanse they want to cleanse of the day. Need to stop doing that, because that's vinegar too, and it's not any more mild. I would even argue to say that it's worse because of the apple. The apple is not, as she just mentioned, the apple is not a true fruit, and it's in slice and slice and slice, and that's one of the fruits that they even mention. Let's say when you first get in the vegan world, but one of the fruits that they talk about a lot that doesn't even have the same nutritional value as when it originally existed, because when it originally existed, it didn't have a lot of nutrients in it. It's mostly just water and sugar. And when you have an apple that's bad, it's grainy. It's like wet sugar. So no, not gonna keep eating your hot sauce.
Okay. All right. I'm going to talk about one last thing, and then also we got a question here. Flash Taylor's like, what book would you guys suggest to read to get better information? I feel like there's probably more than one book, but
books. I mean, we don't really look at a lot of books. That's the funny thing.
No, you can read. I'd rather read. I just like to tell people to read articles over books, because a book is going to be written by one person and it's going to be long. And we're beyond books now. We have phones, so we don't necessarily need to just buy all these books. We can go and read excerpts and stuff and see different opinions and things like that. But I didn't read a lot of books, unless it's fiction. I like to read fiction. So I'm not going to pretend like I sit around reading books.
Yeah, same here. And
there's some
another
stuff.
Another issue with books too is like they're going to have that person's opinion or prejudice in there. And I mean, no shade, because this was me at one point, but a lot of people like books because they take the work out of things. Because if you have everything in this 90s book, you can just reference this one thing over and over again as though it's the end all be all. Whereas what we do, I mean, a lot of it is honestly just intuitive and just talking. We just figure things out. But if we are looking at an article or something like that, I mean, you get to look at multiple things and piece things together. Like Wikipedia, people hate Wikipedia because they don't understand what we were taught in school about Wikipedia. We couldn't use it as a source because it was multiple sources, but it's basically a research paper. So look at the sources that are on there and go research, go look some stuff up. But people don't want to independently read. And I mean, I get it, but I'm not going to recommend any books that don't have any. That's how I learn.
I would just suggest research in biology, research the agricultural timeline as it relates to sociology and religion and history, because all these things, they're all connected. And if we separate them, we're not going to understand why they even want us to eat these things. Like a lot of people, when you tell them, the diet is false, why would they tell us to eat it then? Like for several reasons. For one, to keep you high and dumb. Like a lot of people don't understand that they're telling us that obesity is rising, but they're also telling us to eat foods that cause obesity because they make money off obesity and because they know that being obese is unhealthy. And they want you to be unhealthy because unhealthy people are easier to control. And that's why they have to depict the prehistoric era as a bunch of, those are the actual, you were dumb, you were hitting each other on the head with drumsticks because you were eating meat and you weren't eating your vegetables. When in reality, that is the period we actually need to be looking into and side-eyeing, like, you guys telling the truth? Were we really stupid and you guys taught us how to be smart with some fruit? It doesn't make sense. We were probably more advanced, we were stronger, we were hunters. So how can we be like hunting and being a predator? You have to have instinct, you have to have speed, you have to be smart. So people need to start decode reality because they want you to eat a bunch of sugar so that you could be slow, lethargic, depressed. A lot of depression and all these mental illnesses that they're also promoting and making it like, it seems like they want to coddle mental illness instead of, healing it, curing it, tackling it. Instead they're like, no, join hands because we're mentally ill. No, we need to figure out why we're mentally ill. And it's the food, it's the sugar. And they don't want to say, but I'll say, eat eggs. Like kids, especially, like when people say, oh, my kid doesn't like to eat meat. Okay, we'll give them some eggs because that's the easiest meat to give a child. Don't feed them cereal because cereal is sugar. It's the worst thing that you could feed your child in the morning. That's why they are hyper and they have brain fog. They don't listen because they're high on sugar. And people, because they're so lazy, a lot of these snacks and stuff, they feed into laziness, which goes along with obesity. So you have to just look at different factors, especially history, because historically, slavery thing has a major part to do with agriculture and plants. Like while people were being traded, plants were being traded. And all these spliced things came into existence that we don't need. Like you can't sit up there and say you need cashews because cashews come from India and you're not Indian. So even if you said you needed it, how are you going to get it? You're going to keep going over there? The only way you can get it is if a slave trade exists. You don't need these things.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I will say too, look at dates, because a lot of people, not DAT, like not food, but dates. A lot of people claim that they know the Bible and understand the Bible, and especially a lot of these male gurus. And, when you counteract something, they're like, oh, I know this book, blah, blah, blah. Look at the actual dates of things that are occurring in the Bible, because a lot of that is way more recent than people understand. They think it was like, everything was like in BC times, and the timeline is incorrect, but that's also another story. They think everything was like BC times, millions and millions of years ago. A lot of this stuff happened like in these 2021 years, or even shorter than that, really. So look at the dates, and all that stuff can be easily found online if you don't have your own Bible, whatever. Everything's on the internet these days. You don't need one, but look at where a lot of overlaps are there between agriculture too, because they do mention some of those in the Bible, and you'll see where dates correspond, like the Renaissance period, and how the Moors always talk about how they went over there and taught the Europeans this and that, but then they're like, okay, so what else did they teach them to be able to? They want to blame white supremacy, quote unquote, for taking over everything, and they just think they just popped up out of nowhere and just did this for no reason. Who taught them? Look at the dates, look at the Renaissance period, look at when that happened, look at when the Inquisition, look at when all of this trading and trafficking to the New World, which is really the Old World, came about. So really pay attention to time periods as well.
True. Flash Taylor had asked by any site suggestions. Just Google, just Google. Use Google. And, just Google and your common sense. I know it's not common, but you gotta start somewhere. The last question I want to ask, and then we can wrap it up, give our final points and all that, is just the concept of food pairing. Because I know we talked about all this stuff, and we're breaking myths and stuff like that, which is, great, fine and dandy. But, we're not going to talk tell people about the Illuminati and then be like, all right, well, there you go, have fun. Like we should have some sort of empowerment going on. So when it comes to like food pairing, I'm under the impression that, you should only pair certain foods with other ones, to optimize digestion. Do either of you have any kind of insight on that?
Yeah, you should. If you're gonna eat fruits, you just need to eat fruits by itself, because the fruit's gonna digest fast. It's because it's just watery sugar. So you will want to eat that by itself. If you pair it with meat, you pair it with some fat, your body's gonna be like, well, it's gonna decide. It has to decide which it wants to digest first, and it's probably going to choose the sugar because that's fastest, and then you won't get, the nutrients from the meat. And that's another reason why they told us to pair meats with carbs, because they don't want us to be healthy. And when you eat meats, you can eat them with fats, stuff like that. Yeah, that's really easy. Just eat meat and dairy. You can eat dairy with meat too, but don't mix fruits with meats and dairy. So like dairy that has fruit in it, that's a scam, because that's a lot of sugar mixing in. Like dairy already has a sugar that we can take, our body can take. So once you add, all these sweet things, you're ruining the dairy and the nutritional value that you can get from it. So you don't want to mix those things. They started mixing all that stuff and they ruined our diet.
Yeah. And even with the eating just fruit, just eat one fruit at a time. Like people got caught up in the smoothie craze and started putting, 12 things together, and you don't need all of that.
Right.
It's so rough on the gut. And, yeah. And it's funny because the vegans are like, meat takes so much out of the digestive system. How? It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's sitting in there, the digestive system is taking its time and taking out the nutrients. But when y'all combine these, even though it's all sugar at the end of the day, that's another thing people need to look up. There are different types of sugar. So just because, rice is a carb and green beans are a carb and apples are a carb, all of those carbs are not sourced the same, and they're going to be duking it out in your lower intestine. And that's why a lot of them, either it's gonna get you backed up, and that's why you have some girls who eat like the more processed veggies and fruits, and they have that fupa, all the adipose and other things that settle down there, or you have the ones that are super, super skinny and everything just runs through them because you have all this beef in your gut, not meat, but beef from all the vegetables and fruits and everything just sitting in there trying to figure out who's going to run their race to get out there first. So yeah, food pairing is simple. People made it complicated by mixing all these things together and then being like, oh, I don't feel good. And then just going, instead of researching, just jump into the next fight. Oh, well, I'll try vegan because they said this is this. Okay, but did you look up why you might have been sick to begin with? And I just think that comes down to fear, because people don't really want to know what's going on with their body. And as we stated, people don't want to admit that they're wrong, but you're not going to learn if you can't admit that you're wrong. We all have sat here and said, we thought this, we researched, we learn better. If you want to learn and grow and evolve, ascend, as y'all claim to be doing on there, then research and learn better. And if you find out that you're wrong, okay, cool, you learned something. But you have to not be afraid. That's what a true teacher is, someone who can lead. And, all these gurus are so scared to be wrong, and they cuss us out, especially if it's a woman or a female. They cuss us out whenever we come against what they have to say, instead of just looking it up, so.
Yeah, you got to fill your way up. So meat and like a vegetable on a plate, does that make sense? Or
it depends on the vegetable. Like if it's some good greens you cook down with some real butter, or fat or something like that, that could be fine. But you don't need 3 servings of vegetables and rice and meat. No.
Yeah. The amount of, what do they call them? Sides.
Yeah.
Sides, like this is unnecessary. And when you go to restaurants and they give you these sides, it's just so you can be, think that you've been satisfied because you're so full of carbs. Not necessarily you got any nutritional value though, but you don't need to pair all these vegetables with the meat. Like vegetables in general, fruit is one thing, because fruit predates vegetables. Like us eating fruits, that predates. The idea of vegetables comes so later down the line. So you don't even really need vegetables, but if you eat them, you don't want to overdose on them because the cruciferous vegetables produce extreme amounts of gas in our bellies. They give you gas, like cabbage, broccoli, all that stuff is not really good to overload on. And when we eat, like she said, you have to put this, the fat helps your body absorb it better because like things like greens, especially leafy greens, like the leafy greens are very tough. So the fat helps your body get it through. And I just feel like vegetables, they're not really necessary. They're not. They require unnatural forms of farming, whereas fruits are found in the wild. You're not going to find cabbage in the wild. You can find some berries, you can find, different types of fruits, but these vegetables, I just feel like they were strictly spliced to attack our systems. That's why they push them so hard to like, make sure you eat your vegetables and eat your raw salad with your sauce on it and force people to act like it tastes good. Like people eating these kale wraps and stuff. Kale is disgusting. So once you get over that and you try, you tell yourself it's okay to think that it's disgusting. And the reason why it's disgusting is because the plant, kale, that kills, has toxins in it. And those toxins are to tell your mind, your tongue, like, get me out of your mouth because I'm not food. That's why I taste like this. You have to cook kale for like 3 hours for it to even be mildly chewable. So if you just start admitting that it's okay to find things palatable that are good for you, with the exception of like sugars, even fruits, like fruits are sweet and they could be good for you, but vegetables are nasty for a reason. They're nasty. You didn't like them when you were kids. So I'm just like, I'm done pretending that vegetables are good for you, honestly.
Right.
But I'll eat some, bits of them. I'm not going to be on that no more, especially raw. Like there's no point in eating raw anything of chemicals that they spray on.
So last question for real this time. I know I'm not acting like a preacher. Like I'm done. I'm getting to my point. I'm about to close. But nah, like for real. So salad is a farce. Is that what we can say here?
Man, look, so I can speak on this because my mom used to have me make her a salad every day when I was when I would get home from school before she got home from work. Yes, because she thought it was the healthy thing to do. And that's when I saw her health deteriorate the most. Like it was like her daily dinner thing, just about, with the exception on the weekends. And there were reasons that were going on as to why, she chose certain diet paths, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, stop, because what is a salad? Either you're using iceberg lettuce, which I think everyone has agreed pretty much globally that's trash. It's garbage lettuce. Or you're using romaine, which didn't I get recalls a couple of years ago for all the E. coli and all of that. So you're left with kale as your greens or raw cabbage. Neither of those taste good. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I like salad just to say that I'm, vegan. No. And then they have to drown it. They love to say Steelers and we eat meat because it's seasoned, but what are all these sauces? What are dressings? What are, all the oils and stuff that you put in that you have to super coat things in just to even make it slip down your throat properly because it tastes terrible. And I don't know why folks just want to admit that it tastes bad. Like she said, like I used to have to struggle to eat some meals because I'm like, oh man, this cauliflower black bean wrap is delicious. And it's not. It wasn't. And that was just gassy afterwards, like she said too. Like it's not even just the shitting that was annoying. It's all the pooping. And then you're like doing things because you're a person. And then you just have to hide fires. Like it was just too much, dog. My body was no.
Salads to females, they made it seem like if women eat salads, we lose weight. And when you look up lettuce, it's weird because this is like the only vegetable that they attribute to the word lactase as far as the root. And that's weird because plants don't have any milk in them. So you can tell that they're like, we're going to get these women to eat these raw vegetables so they can mess up their hormone and feel bad when they just can't lose weight. This is how you lose weight. You lose weight by not eating carbs and eating more fat. And people think if you eat fat, you're going to get fat. But no, carbs make you fat. So on movies, when the popular girl is saying, I don't eat carbs, she doesn't eat carbs because she knows it's going to make her fat.
Mean Girls.
Say that a lot. So we don't need to eat salad, especially raw. And we don't need to follow a lot of the diets that were given to us by like Eastern religions, like Buddhist religions, monks telling women not to eat meat when we have a menstrual cycle. So yes, we do need to eat meat. We are able to form life in our body. So we do need to eat some flesh here and there. You know, and to say that we don't, it's just like you're trying to attack our system. And it's funny how guys will say, we're not equal. I'm like, okay, so we don't have an equal diet plan, right? Don't need to be eating the same all the time, right? They don't want to admit that. They tell us, no, you need the juice and all this. No, you need the juice. I don't need the juice. I need to eat what I want to eat. And you don't have a period, so you don't need to be talking about it, like, and telling me what's good for it. Because plants, men need to understand, like a lot of men, not saying you, but a lot of men, they like to pretend that these plants have a major role in our reproduction, and it needs to stop because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
And it does the exact opposite. Like, the sugar that you don't burn through the consumption of these carbs, that turns into fat. And I think one of the issues is that we say and this is one of the word tricks that they do with homophones and because it's not the English is the curse language. This is another topic, but it's just that people don't understand how they inserted words here and there. That's why etymology is so important. Look at where the word came from. But we associate fat with like fat as an overweight, but fat from an animal, like nutrient rich fat, is different. What overweight people really have is adipose tissue. And I really think people should just start calling it what it is. When you say, oh, it's fat, then that's why we think, oh, if we eat fat, we get fat. But no, that's not it at all. That is very nutrient dense, especially in certain cuts of meat. So the adipose tissue that they get is from those unburned carbs. And that's how women get these cystic fibrosis on their ovaries, or they get yeast infections are really common, and they're trying to normalize those things, quote unquote, one of those other words I wish would, they're trying to normalize these things by saying, oh, women get yeast infections. Yeah, imbalance. The word infections in there. What are y'all not getting? This is not something normal. You should not be getting regular yeast infections like you get a monthly cycle. Like, stop that. And that all comes from two people trying to tell us, men primarily trying to tell us how our bodies work. Never lived a day in their body, never had a single menstrual cycle, never had a vagina, never, none of these things. And it's not to say that, everything they say is wrong, but that's not your business. That's not your place. You over here with ED worried about why I shouldn't have a cycle. Like, this is not your business. It just simply is not. And with the research that I'm doing now, I see that we have a different body structure. Like, we make more blood than men. It's not like a competition. It's because we make babies. And when we have a baby, we produce 50% more blood. You can't do that properly on a plant-based diet. Where the blood coming from? Where's those nutrients coming from? Because the baby is feeding on you. And if you can't feed the baby, guess what? Baby's not going to be strong. And that's why these vegan babies are malnourished. Or wasn't there that case where the state ruled child neglect for the mom who fed the baby vegan, or one of those stories, because the baby was malnourished. So people should stop pretending, and as we've been saying, just be okay with being wrong. It's okay. It's okay. If you're truly on this journey you claim you're on and you want to elevate and do all of this, part of that is admitting you're wrong and being okay with failing. Because I think we said this too the other day, true scientists fail. If you're running an experiment, your experiment's not going to go perfect the first time. And I think that comes from the Eastern religions too, because they have this idea of, just something ascending down on you and cloaking you and you just having the know and the knowledge. That's not realistic. Even the top, witch had to test her powers. It just doesn't come to you. People are too entitled these days.
And when those plants were being spliced, a lot of people had to die so that they could be like, oh, this didn't work. We got to try it again. We got to splice another apple because these things were poisonous at first. But that's not being looked into. And another thing I want to say is when it comes to women, a good fact, well, actually a good truth to know about liver is the entire supplement market was built on liver alone. And when women would get pregnant back in the day, before they told us to eat rice and all this other garbage, women were advised to eat liver for their pregnancy so that they could get like a lot of nutrients for the baby. And so the medical industry, which is a part of the food industry, instead of them saying that, eat the liver, they just decided, oh, let's make a bunch of separate vitamins plus prenatal pills and tell them to take that. When we know taking pills, that's not, found in nature. That's not natural. But that's what they built it off of. The whole supplement market is built off organs. Because if you just eat organs, you don't need to eat supplements. You don't, especially every day. You don't even have to eat liver every day. You could eat liver once a week, once every 2 weeks, and get what you would attempt to get from vitamins, because everybody can't even convert vitamins, because when you put it in your body is like, what is this pellet thing that you put inside of me? Like, some people can get benefits from it, but me personally, I didn't see any benefits from taking vitamins. But when I ate the liver, I could immediately feel it in my brain. I felt like my body was, feeling it. So that's a good thing to know as far as women who are afraid to get back into meat, because a lot of females, they have this guilt when they jump into veganism. They feel so guilty about eating meat when they're pregnant, but it's very dangerous for you to not eat what you're supposed to eat when you're pregnant. Your body is not, the baby is not vegan, because the baby is going to be inside of you with a blood fluid sac, mucus, all that. Plus you're going to breastfeed. That's not vegan. So that doesn't have any, plants don't have anything to do with what we got going on,
Indeed. All right, so we about to wrap it up. I guess was that your final point? You got anything else to say before we, head off into the sunset or whatever? Guess that's it now.
I do have a point. I think that veganism is helping push a lot of hypersexual movements that are being influenced right now, because sugar, as we know, like you mentioned, cocaine, drugs, and sugar and stuff like that, these are things that people like to delight in during sexual activities. And I feel like the more plants we consume and the less meats we consume, we start getting lazy and lustful and just high, because when you eat plants, you get high. And that just couples with a lot of the, hypersexual, especially porn. Like, I've never seen this many common people. Not to say that if you do porn, you're not a common person, but back in the day, everybody wasn't into porn, and they weren't doing, like, people that I went to school with are on porn. They're posting their sex tapes. Like, this is all, and they're saying, oh, it's because we're coming out of our shell and we're freeing ourselves. And I'm like, well, if you go look at the origins of pornography, it's not a pretty thing. So I don't know, that I feel like that's because people are just overloading on junk food. Plus they're getting into veganism. As you see, they won't let go of snacks. Like, they'll say, I'm vegan, but they'll still eat all these candies and stuff because those are vegan. Like, people brag about Oreos are vegan, but Oreos are garbage and they're full of chemicals and they're not healthy. But because they're vegan, it's okay. So I think that has to do with a lot of the sexual depravity going on.
Yeah, I can definitely say I've gotten some, when I used to be vegan, I used to get some pretty lustful looks when I used to say that. And they'd be like, oh, really? I'm like, all right, I'm going to go now. I'm going to head out. All right, so if someone wants to find y'all, where can they find you at? Ahmadji?
Instagram. My Instagram name is Lonnie Luly, and that's LONNILUILY.
All right.
I'm not on Twitter anymore.
Instagram, Hope You Smile. If you need any birth services, the website is manifests with an S of hope.com. I mean, I'm on Twitter, but I'm not really on there. So you can follow me if you want. I might not follow back. I'm barely on there. It's the same as my Instagram.
True. You can find me. You found me at. Make sure you like, subscribe to Slander. Just because you got man titties doesn't mean that you can speak on women issues.
Bees.
I think that's about it. Just follow your body, not what other people is telling you, and do your Googles. or DuckDuckGo if you're trying to be really, if you're really trying to go in.